Welcome to Aiken This Week. I'm Emery Langston. Today our topic of conversation is something that impacts all of our citizens, and that's our city's infrastructure. My guests today are George Grinton, who is the Director of Engineering and Utilities here at the City of Aiken, and Rick Toole, who is the President of Toole Engineers Incorporated. And I thank you gentlemen both for being here and taking a few minutes out of your schedule to talk to us today.
Thank you.
This topic is something that has been talked about for some time in our city, and it's a very, very important issue. I know our city council and our city manager, as well as you gentlemen, are really taking a hard look at this topic, and it's very extensive. So we're very pleased to kind of get an overview of this today, and we'll just jump right on in and get started. And George, we're going to start with you. And what exactly is the infrastructure that the City of Aiken is responsible for operating and maintaining?
Well, most people think of water and sewer lines, sanitary sewer lines, as being what makes up our infrastructure, but it's actually more than that. There's also, it's really all the utility systems that the city depends on to provide services. So it's, in addition to the water lines, it's the water production equipment. In addition to sanitary sewer lines, it's the lift stations that move sanitary sewer from lower points to higher points where gravity flow can continue the effluent moving along. And then there's roads, and with the roads there's stormwater. And so all of these make up the infrastructure the city has to maintain.
Sure, and it is quite extensive. So tell us about how big the infrastructure system that the City of Aiken is responsible for.
Well, let's take them one at a time.
Okay.
The city has approximately 410 miles of water lines and then 99 miles of water service lines that connect the main line to the water meters. To produce the water that we distribute, we have 5 water treatment plants. We have 9 water wells that source 3 of our water treatment plants. We have a spring water source and 1 surface water source of water. To control the water distribution system, there's all sorts of other pieces of equipment. We have 20,582 water meters. We have 2,004 fire hydrants, and we have 26,604 fittings and valves.
My goodness.
So that takes care of the water. Sanitary sewer, very similar type of story. We have 282 miles of sanitary sewer gravity lines and 30 miles of sanitary sewer force main lines to maintain. We operate 40 sanitary sewer lift stations. And this again gets it to distribute to the Aiken County Public Service Authority.
Right.
They actually do the wastewater treatment of our effluent. Connecting to the sanitary sewer lines, we have 6,630 manholes, and we actually haven't completed the evaluation of how many sewer service lines we have that connect to the mains. So in addition to the 282 miles, there's quite a few service lines. Within the City of Aiken, we have 290 miles of roads. Now, not all of the roads are owned and maintained by the city.
Sure.
There's actually 153 miles of roads that are state roads and are maintained by SCDOT. There are 50 miles of private roads, which are maintained by the homeowners association citizens, and they pay for those roads. Within those roads, then stormwater also is the utility that connects to the roads. And so the city, the 85 miles that we maintain for roads, we have 171 miles of stormwater lines. Connected to that are 7,475 inlets and catch basins, 1,904 manholes and junction boxes, and we have many miles of ditches and many detention ponds to maintain.
Sure. That is very extensive.
It is.
why do we need to do anything with our infrastructure? I mean, it's very extensive. So kind of tell us about, the needs for doing things that we need to do.
Sure. Well, the short answer is that we may need to maintain the systems that are vital services to our citizens. We need to make sure they're sustainable. We need to make sure that they are maintained in a cost-effective manner. There's really two ways that you can maintain any asset that you have. You can wait till it breaks down, but if you do that, the repair in the case of our utilities is going to be an emergency, which means that it'll cost more.
Right.
It'll mean that we have upset customers because their water's off,
Yeah.
their sewer's off, and obviously it causes problems.
Yes.
And you have the potential, particularly with water and sewer, or rather with storm and sanitary sewers, to have environmental impacts.
Right.
Where you are you're actually potentially going to violate some environmental state rules. So the second approach is to assess the condition of the infrastructure so that the right pipes are maintained at the right time. It really is our responsibility to the community to protect the environment,
Sure.
provide the vital services that they depend on. And so if you become more proactive, if you know more about your line, your system, you can maintain them proactively so that you prevent problems from occurring.
Sure, absolutely, and we definitely want to do that. So how do we know where our entire infrastructure is? I mean, you've laid out a lot of miles and extensive numbers, so how do we know where all of this is?
Well, to start with, we're fortunate to have a GIS system, software program. It's called ArcGIS, which the city uses to identify where all the lines are, where all the valves, where all the meters, etc. are. And this was started 10, 15 years ago. When we started looking at that gives you a starting point of where everything is. We recognized, however, that we had a lot of gaps in the information. So this past year, we have been taking all of our engineering drawings, the development plans, the infrastructure drawings, and we've been scanning them into the computer so that they could be digitally connected to our GIS.
Okay.
We've worked with a consultant to take the attribute data from these drawings so that they can be inputted to the GIS so that it is readily available and accessible for our engineers and our crews.
That's wonderful, and being able to do something like that to hopefully help with the efficiency and the effectiveness of making sure that you're getting to what you need to and that things are marked appropriately. Well, how do we know what the condition of all of this is? I know a lot of it's underground, so how do we know?
Well, again, the short answer is we really don't.
Sure.
What we really need to do is to understand the status of each pipe. And to do that, we need to take on a methodical assessment program where we evaluate the condition of each component and determine what our risks are with the various pieces and come up with a rehabilitation repair program to ensure that they're sustained and meeting the citizens' needs. And typically you'd start with your oldest infrastructure first.
Sure, absolutely. Well, how will the city be able to keep up with the condition of all of those miles of pipeline and valve fittings and everything that you kind of laid out?
Well, GIS is a good start,
Sure.
but we needed an asset data management software program, and we did purchase Infomaster from Innovives
Okay.
about a year ago. And what this software does is it allows us to examine each, it tracks each component for us, and it prioritizes the segments for repair and evaluation. The software it has statistical modeling in it. So it can take the attribute data from GIS, and it can, and this typically is age of the pipe, what the pipe is made of, how long it's been in the ground, you know, where it is, that sort of thing. Yeah, and the soil conditions, and it will calculate a probability of any individual segment or component failing based on some modeling they have. It also then looks at the GIS relational information. For example, where is a component feeding a hospital or a school? Where is another component next to an environmentally sensitive area like a wetland or a pond? And it looks at and calculates a consequence of failure. So if you take the probability of failure and you multiply it by the consequence of failure, you establish which components are at the highest risk for causing problems for the city. And so with that, what you're able to do is create a priority of what's the pipes that you should be looking at. And so those will be the ones that you will we will start, you know, concentrating on. The nice thing about the software is that, you know, 50 years from now, the city will still expect us to maintain all these systems, and future utility engineers and crews will be able to access this information. They will know what was repaired and when, and we'll have a history, and they'll be able to continue to prioritize the needs of that time.
That is wonderful, and that's truly fascinating about how these systems can work together to really come up with those probabilities. Just another way that we're trying to keep up, be more efficient and effective, and that's some really exciting stuff. All right, let's talk now about the different categories of the infrastructure that we have talked about: the sanitary sewer, the water production and distribution, and the stormwater, sewer, city roads. What is needed for each one? And let's talk about each one by category.
Well, each category of infrastructure really has its own specific needs and unique challenges. As the infrastructure ages, we experience more frequent failures that disrupt the service. And in the case of sanitary and storm, we can cause damage to the surrounding area. Typically, the expected life of a system is determined by the material, the conditions in the ground, and to some degree, you know, whether the surface is hard or easy. A lift station versus is going to be operating. If it's a big station versus a small station, it has a different wear rate. So, so you really have to look at everything individually.
Okay, all right. So with water, what are our concerns for our city's water system?
In general, our water system is in good condition. We're fortunate not to have any lead pipes.
Very fortunate.
So we don't have the problems that we've all been hearing about and reading in the news. We do have 25 miles of water line that was installed in 1911.
Oh my.
And so it is 105 years old. It is, again, it's made out of cast iron pipe, which is actually a pretty durable, and back in 1911 it's also pretty thick walled. So it is in basically fairly good shape for the things that we've looked at, but it's now prudent to start assessing it and evaluating what it needs might be. We have some water lines that have only been in the ground for about 30 years, but they're PVC thin wall pipe. And we're having more frequent failures with that line system. So there's an example of a 30-year pipe actually is probably going to be a higher priority for us when we look and see how many failures we're getting versus some of the older pipe. So age isn't always the thing that, you know.
You have to look at the materials and
you have to look
at
the unique situation each pipe is seeing.
Very good. Okay, so sanitary sewer. What's needed to maintain that system?
Well, in sanitary sewer, our biggest concern is the approximately 60 miles of gravity sewer lines that were installed in the downtown area in the 20s and 30s. so it's over 75,
Right.
85 years old. And we also have some newer pipe that was installed in the growth time of Aiken in the 50s that is approaching 50-year life
Yeah.
and more, and is near the end of its expected life. So again, in this area we're more concerned about joints, age, tree roots, things of that nature, and so we need to do a prioritization and assessment of the sewer lines. And there's I&I is a concern for capacity of the line, as if you have joints that are leaking, you have breaks that you don't know about, groundwater, rainwater gets into the stormwater pipes, and then it actually limits the capacity of the stormwater lines, or of the sanitary sewer lines. So that's, let alone if water is getting in, sanitary sewer can be getting out. And again,
Sure.
there may be some hidden environmental concerns that we
Right.
should be addressing. So a systematic evaluation of these lines is what's called for.
And I think that is, I think lots of folks might just think, well, wow, they're old pipes, so we've got to take a look at it. But wow, everything that you have to take a look at, from materials to the tree roots to how much things have grown to the age. I mean, it's a lot more complicated than I really understood. So okay, let's talk about our stormwater system.
The stormwater infrastructure, we have the least amount of information on.
Oh.
We've been focusing our first attention on water and sanitary sewer. And storm, however, we are just now putting in the drawings for a stormwater. We completed water and sanitary, and now we're doing storm. We have to do the same really evaluation as we do with sanitary sewer. You need to go out and look at the lines. We need to assess their condition and then rank them for probability of failure and cause of failure, or consequence of failure. And there's commonly used about in the 70s and 80s was corrugated metal pipe, and we know that has an accelerated rate of failure.
Oh.
Lots and lots of the corrugated metal pipes that are basically 30 plus years old, they cause a lot of problem. And of course what they do then is, if they have a leak, they can destroy the structure of a road.
Sure.
And so those are going to be important to look at as well.
Absolutely. Well, last but not least, let's talk about roads, how our roads are maintained within the city limits. I guess everything that we've really talked about until now has been mostly items that we can't see.
Right.
So now certainly our roads are a hot topic. So let's talk about our roads for a minute.
Sure. As I mentioned before, there are the three different categories of roads. The private roads within the city are maintained by homeowners associations. They are to be built to city standards, and they are. However, the city is not responsible for their maintenance, so the homeowners associations pay for their upkeep.
Right.
As I said, the largest number of roads are the roads that the SCDOT owns and maintains. They allocate approximately $250,000 a year to resurface roads in the city. And if you do the math, if you divide that $250,000 into the in today's prices, basically they're going to be able to resurface a road every 72 years.
Wow.
So there's obviously a big gap
Yes.
in funding for what's needed for maintenance. Expected road life should be in the 17 to 20 years, and even longer depending on its service. And if we have 85 miles of road to maintain, and we use the average 20-year cost, today's cost, we would need $500,000 a year to do that program.
Okay.
We've mostly relied on capital sales tax funding, and our capital sales tax 3 funding provided us with an average of $250,000 per year for the 7 years that
Sure.
CPST 3 is currently funding. So you can see the city is also underfunding
Right.
the roads that we have. So the city is it needs to address the maintenance, the funding gap, and the roads need to be evaluated just like water and sewer lines are evaluated, so that you can set up priorities for their maintenance, because again, they wear out at different rates.
Sure.
We have been working with Rick Toole of WR Toole Engineers,
Yes.
and to help us to develop a better program, to develop a cost-effective approach to maintaining your roads. And Rick's here to tell us a little bit about
Very
that.
good. Very
Okay.
good.
Well, like George said, roads have a life as well.
Yeah.
And when you look at a 72-year segment between paving, roads may last 20 years. That tells you you've got a lot of roads that are in bad
Right.
condition. That is a traditional model. That's the way the United States has approached road maintenance for a long time. And what we're recommending is a change in that paradigm, so to speak. And it's coming from the Federal Highway Administration
Okay.
and some national organizations. And it's called a pavement preservation program. A different form of P3, if you will.
Okay.
The idea there is to try to extend the life of the pavement through early intervention. You actually perform maintenance activities which are less costly early during the pavement life. And in doing so, you're able to extend that life of the pavement instead of a pavement lasting 20 years. If it's designed and constructed appropriately on the initial stages, you can extend a pavement life out 20 or 30 years beyond the initial life.
Oh, that's
So
a significant.
Significant, and a significant cost savings
Sure.
as well. One of the issues we have to overcome is, what do we do with the roads that are in extremely poor condition? How do we take care of those roads in the short term? So through George's asset management system, it goes through the same prioritization type program. You actually look at what you can do to those roads that are in poor condition versus those roads that are in moderate condition, those roads in good condition.
Sure.
You balance your expenditures out, and you take care of your best roads first, and then you slowly work in the roads that are in poor condition. What happens over a period of time, you wind up with all good roads. It may take a while, but it is a continuing process.
Right.
And like any asset management program, 50 years from now, we're still going to be doing the same thing.
Sure.
The idea is to do more with less.
Right.
And there's a lot of different ways of taking care of roads. SCDOT has also adopted this program, and they're trying to implement it, but it's in a different level of implementation from their standpoint. But we're going to suggest this to the city fathers to take a look at and see if it's something that they would like to pursue.
Very good. Very good. Well, George, I know that this is probably a real hot topic with all of this is how can the city afford to do all these things? I think Rick and you both have mentioned some wonderful steps, but how can we afford it?
Well, there's a multi-pronged approach needed to funding. One of the avenues we mentioned was the capital sales tax, and since approximately the year 2000, the Aiken County has voted a special 1-cent county sales tax to fund capital projects.
Sure.
These projects are listed in the ballot, and very specific projects are put into place so that these improvements can be made. The latest capital sales tax funding has been $30 million or so, $33 million for the city. So one opportunity is to allocate some infrastructure projects that would pay for a significant portion of infrastructure needs. I guess there's always the caveat that the voters don't have to vote and pass the 1-cent sales tax. So that's hopefully that program opportunity will continue, but we just don't know.
Sure.
There's a second opportunity, and that is the opportunity to borrow money at very favorable interest rates from the state revolving fund. This is a program that DHEC runs. It's federal funds that come through them, and then they administer through the state. And what they do is they prioritize water, sewer, storm projects, and will provide these low interest loans. You pay them back over a 20 or 30 year period, so you're able to service the debt over a longer period of time. Therefore, you know, your rates don't have to go up
Right.
that much or even at all, depending on how much you're borrowing
Right.
and you know what you're already carrying for rates and loans in your rate structure. And of course, the final option is to raise user fees.
Yeah.
So water, sewer, road, all of those can be you know, raised. And you would only do that after you have determined how much infrastructure project funding you have from capital sales tax, how much you can borrow, what the projects, you know, that you have defined. And once you've done all of that and you see what you're going to be servicing for the debt, you see what you're getting for capital sales tax, things that are left over that still need to be done, then I think you would seriously look at you know, raising you know, user rates.
Sure.
I know there's been some talk about the maintenance tax for cars.
Yes.
User vehicle maintenance fee. $20 would actually cover the city funding needs, and if you think about it, we will be adding roads as developments come in,
Sure.
and they deteriorate every day as we drive over
Yeah.
them. So there will be needs, you know, for funding
Right.
into the future.
Absolutely. This, you both have done a wonderful job of giving an overview onto such a complex issue. I did not realize that so much went into all of these infrastructures that the city has and has to maintain. You know, George, we had some folks on from engineering and utilities who actually work with different segments of the maintenance, daily maintenance of some of the infrastructure systems with Danny Breaker and Troy Spann with, you know, what citizens can do to help with the maintenance.
Yes.
And Sabina Craig, who talked about the stormwater and, you know, what that means and what citizens can do. So this is a very extensive issue. It's a very complex issue, and we really appreciate you both being here to kind of give us an overview of what these things mean and what we're looking at. Education is power. I appreciate the education that you've given us today. So anything else that we haven't touched on that either of you want to mention? I think you both did a great job of covering the issues.
Yeah, you know, as big a problem as it is, you have to do component repair,
Yes.
point repair, and that's the challenge of infrastructure. You try to do as much as you can together, but it's that manhole or it's that water line or it's that meter that you know, is broken that you got to go and repair. So we'll just keep working on it.
There you go. Lots of challenges and lots of choices.
Yes.
So thank you, gentlemen, again, both for
Thank
being
you.
here. And we thank you for joining us today for our Aiken This Week, and we'll see you next time.